James T. Kirk, renegade and terrorist.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Solo off, and here we come. Oh, turn that off, and this. I'm getting better at this, guys. Okay, welcome everybody. We are here on Live Long and Podcast, and Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country is over and has been since 1991. But we are just getting started here on the podcast, Live Long and Podcast, we call it. I'm Dave Mader, coming at you with Star Trek TV and movie reviews, joined by my first officer, Jane Mader. Hi, Jane.
Hi.
Hey, and we got a great panel for you today. What a panel do we have to talk about? Maybe the greatest Star Trek movie there has ever been.
It is.
We are talking about Star Trek VI. Let's go. Let's start in the top right hand corner. If you're on the video version of this podcast, we got the ever salty Jody Simpson with us.
Hello.
Hello. In the bottom right hand corner, we have the incredulous Kevin Millard.
Hello.
And in the left-hand corner, we have my brother, Jeff Mader, and my mother, Beth Mader.
Hey.
Hey, how you doing? Okay, we're all here. This is the one we've all been waiting for, right?
The good one.
The good one. The best one, perhaps. We're talking about Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Let's talk about this panel. First and foremost, wow, what a movie. What a great movie.
What a movie. What an entertaining movie.
Yeah.
Great final movie for this cast.
What a send-off this was.
Yep.
And how much better are we all feeling right now than we were last week when we were watching Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. So
we're just in the corridor of good movies now, though. Like there's a little bit of a corridor, and then we go to bad movies again.
Yeah. There's ups and downs with this Star Trek movie scene. I want to get some opinions. Let's start with, Jane, do you want to say anything before I go to the panel?
No. I'd like to hear everyone else.
Okay, I'm going to start with Jody because I know Jody's a big fan of this movie.
I am.
And this is the one movie you don't say too many negative things on. Not too many salty comments here.
Well,
it's low salt.
There is some things that suck in this movie, but for the most part, it's a great movie. This is, in my opinion, the hallmark of the original series movies. This is the one that they got right all the way. I can't even think of anything really that bad about this movie. Like, there is some stupid things in it, but there's some dialogue that's just terrible. But it's, for the most part, this is a great movie.
Kevin Millard, what are you thinking about this movie?
About the same. For the most part, this is a great movie. One thing I wish they had done is given Sulu a series after this.
Yeah, that would.
That's
I think
interesting.
He would have made an excellent captain.
But it was nice to see him the way it was. So
yeah.
Was that ever considered?
I have no idea.
Because later on, there's a Star Trek Voyager episode that crosses over with this movie and all the events on the Excelsior with Captain Sulu, in that we find out that Tuvok was a member of that Excelsior crew as a younger man. He's a younger Vulcan, if you will, which we'll get to. I think we'll tie into that movie quite a bit, or to that episode of Voyager. Okay, Jeff, Mom. Jeff, you want to weigh in first? This movie, you were only 2 years old when it came out, so you saw it a little bit later.
I saw all these movies a little bit later in life, but yeah.
I know it. Well, I think for Star Trek V, you were alive for that one, but maybe you were just a couple months old. This one, you're a little older. But I remember Mom taking me to see this movie at about the age of 8, almost 9. So we're going to talk about that. But Jeff, what do you think about Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country?
Very good movie. Like you both Jody and Kevin said, it's very rewatchable. It moves. There's never really a boring moment in the movie. It's very well written. Right to the end, they don't overextend things. Like, everything moves right. Like, it's the appropriate amount of time. Like, the final confrontation with Chang is the appropriate amount of time. They're on that planet for the appropriate amount of time. Like, everything seems to make sense, and they carefully wrote it and made sure that it came out right. And I think that they failed with that in all the odd movies. They didn't take the necessary time to write the movie, and this movie was written well. Even though you could see it, certain things coming. You could pretty much once like the whole initial attack happens, you could see that like the what's her name, the Vulcan Kim Cattrall's character. I could see like it made only sense when they were showing like that audio recording during the trial. Like you're like, well, she was the only one there. So, so she's going to be involved in some way down the road.
Right.
Now, when you first watch the movie, you're probably not thinking about that. But the more you rewatch it, you kind of go, yeah, I mean, who else would it be? I mean, so those are my first takes.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a Vulcan, and we're not expecting that kind of out of a Vulcan as well, that she ends up being the betrayer.
But I kind of like movies on a rewatch when you watch it a second time. You like, oh, I didn't pick up on that part. I didn't pick up on that. Like you pointed out in the beginning at the transporter when she said to the two guys that went to the ship, she's like, okay, guys, you have work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's more fun to rewatch when they do give you.
When you realize that those two are the assassins, and she's actually telling them to go kill, or get ready to go,
just coming out of nowhere,
go on this mission.
She did it. You know?
Yeah, it plays very differently on this.
But imagine watching this movie for the first time. Like when you watch it for the first time, the movie starts off very Star Trek, very normal bridge, blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden they're firing at a Klingon and they have no idea why. And then there's this panic, right? And it's just nice to kind of see not everything's perfect, not everything's hunky-dory, and that was nice about this movie, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of that, the first time watching it, Mom, remember when we got the news this movie came out? Do you remember?
Honestly, David, I don't. But
okay. Do you remember when you said they said, oh, they're making another Star Trek movie, and you said, I never thought they would make another Star Trek movie. I thought the five was supposed to be the last one. I think it was you and Dad talked about this. But anyway, we went to go see it December 6th, 1991.
You went on opening night?
Well, I think we went opening weekend.
Opening weekend.
Yeah,
pretty sure.
on the weekend for sure.
Yeah, and
which theater did we go to?
We went to Point Claire.
Point Claire, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Quebec. Okay, so what do you think of this movie? Come on, you're here, so you must like it.
I do like it. It's not going to outdo my 4 because I like humor, and it has a bit, but I do like it very much. Watching it again last week, I thought, this Kim Cattrall, she's not a Vulcan. That's all. That's what kept going through my head because she wasn't as logical as I thought she should be. That's the read. She kept the way she would grill Spock. That didn't even seem logical to me because
what in the scene where they're in his quarters talking?
Yeah. Like, I mean, in retrospect, you get it because she turns out to be the bad guy, but like I'm just thinking, like you wouldn't see Spock treat his father that way. Like it was so much honor there. Like he's the older Vulcan. She's the younger Vulcan. Yeah, she's top of her class and all that kind of stuff. But I just didn't feel she gave Spock the respect that normally Vulcans give to their elders. That was my first clue,
Something was off with her.
Yeah, something's off with her.
Yeah, well, so with her character specifically, and also the Admiral Cartwright character, who he's back in this from Star Trek 4,
right.
Who he also played Sisko's father in Deep Space Nine. But I think the fact that the betrayers are like people we know, like at least on the Federation side, right? And that it has more like weight to it. From that feeling, because originally they wanted Savick, they wanted Christy Alley to come back for this,
right,
and she said no, so they wrote this other character that was very similar in Valeris. Oh my, we have a special guest here, everybody. We're gonna go to audio only just so we can bring this special guest in. Hold on, coming in. In 3, 2, 1. Here he is.
Benny!
Need to interrupt. Hi.
Benny, what's going on?
I know I'd be right in the middle of this thing.
We are. We just started.
We're in the middle of the broadcast, but hey, we'll take a special call. What do you think of Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country?
As you can imagine, Dave, I have not watched it.
Never?
You might not be surprised to hear. Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh no.
So why is he on this then?
For the opposing
Like, no
point of
offense,
view.
Betty, I love you, but what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah, I'm on this
Like-
because I missed you guys.
Aw.
Dave sent me a link and some times, and yeah,
Yeah.
thought I'd
I said
check
we
it out.
would, hey, if you
and
want.
it works.
Yeah, we'll just talk about Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, Benny. And you know what? Like you can stay on the audio only version and just chime in when you have a witty remark, which you always do. So here, we're gonna hide you.
We'll be back we'll be still on in about an hour. We'll be
But you can come back in an
live,
hour,
but
and we'll probably be done the
chatting in about an hour.
podcast by then too. So if
It's
you want to
not-
pop back
not
in,
broadcasting.
Yeah,
We'll be
so
here all
whatever,
day.
Didn't mean to totally sorry to interrupt you nerds talking about nerd stuff.
okay, we'll see you later, Betty. All right.
Yeah. Hi, Beth and Chief.
All right, we can all still hear you, Benny, so it's all good. Okay, so just Star Trek 6. Let's talk about this a little bit more. All right, so yeah, he's still audio. We can still hear you, and you can still hear us, Benny. We're all here.
So I hear, yeah. Just living my.
This
You can also
podcast
hear-
is turning into a shit show.
It is. I gotta take back command here. Okay, we're
Yeah,
we're
you mean to say that I've taken this thing down? That's awesome. I'm pretty happy. That was easy.
That's not what I was implying.
okay. Where were we? We were just kind of talking to Mom about her feelings on the movie. It's not as good as Star Trek 4.
Not for me, but it's a very good movie. It's very well written. I absolutely agree.
You don't remember taking
Right,
me to see
you're right.
it.
It's back to more traditional Star Trek, up in the heavens, and the Klingons are the bad guys, and all that kind of fun stuff that goes on. But yeah, like I guess I like the comedy more, and there is a bit of comedy in this for sure, like the Romulan ale and who's coming to dinner and all that kind of stuff is very funny.
Oh, you get to see all the Star Trek characters be like hungover. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, no, that was very well done.
And not only that, they're hungover, and then they have to deal with a crisis at the same time.
Sure.
That's amazing. I thought.
No, it's very well done. I don't disagree. I would give it it's my number 2.
Okay, so let's talk about. I want to talk through like the play-by-play of the movie. I just where this movie starts. This movie again starts with 2.5 minutes of credits.
But that's
Did it-
okay in this movie because the music is awesome.
Yeah.
The music
Yeah.
is really awesome in this movie. I don't know who this composer is. It's a new one,
I
but
don't know, but it's very. I was watching it and it reminded me of Batman.
Yeah.
you know what? You're right. It's very like Danny
Very-
Elfman.
Very
Right.
Danny Elfman. Yeah. And then there's dead silence.
I find it kind of ironic though that they would serve them Romulan ale to Klingons.
Well, because
Well-
it's illegal and everybody enjoys it.
Good stuff.
Because there's a scene where he's like, where did you get this? And he's like, oh, we can get it or whatever. So
It's like Cuban cigars for Americans, I guess, communists, but
yeah.
they're
It's,
that good.
it's a thing that nobody can get a hold of. Yeah.
Except everybody, apparently.
No,
Except
yeah.
everybody, apparently. Yeah.
But
I thought
especially
Romulan-
especially in next gen. In next gen, like they could get it all the time. It was like no problem.
And I thought it was more of a concentrated drink, but what they were drinking in this movie was more of like a wine sized. But I thought I've seen it that it's more of a liqueur.
So I have to keep muting Benny because he's
yeah.
like having chips or something. All right,
We got a show.
Oh, them
going on
Englishmen.
down here
that Englishman. Yeah,
off screen.
we can see him off screen. It's quite distracting, actually. Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah, just but the 2.5 minutes of credits that start this movie, but the music really is awesome. There's like this ominous Danny Elfman-esque score, da, 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 da. And then at the very end, right, and with the big explosion that kicks off the movie. And this movie is an allegory for the end of the Cold War. It's like what if the Berlin Wall came down, but in space is sort of like the whole premise of this. That I guess that that
This
was
was around the same time. This was
around the same
91.
time, right? 91. Yeah, it's the same year, right?
Would have written it at the same
Yeah.
Yeah, would have
Yeah,
been written around the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, and this whole adage of like the old Vulcan proverb, as he says, where's that?
There's an old Vulcan proverb. Only Nixon could go to China.
Yeah, and like this idea like that Kirk is the worst enemy of the Klingons. As we heard John Shucks say, there will be no peace as long as Kirk lives.
All right, can we
And-
talk about that boardroom scene though with Kirk and Spock real quick?
We'll
Like,
get to it. We'll get to
Yeah.
it, Jeff. We got the opening scene. It's like right after this. It's right after the explosion and the Sulu stuff.
Oh, I thought it happened before.
So there's got the explosion. Then we go over to Sulu on the Excelsior with his teacup. He's like, I'm now the captain of the Excelsior, and we've been cataloging gaseous anomalies for the last 3 years. And that's when they get the and they get hit with the shockwave. He goes, shields,
And which I thought at that moment, I'm like, why aren't shields automated at all? Like at least like a ship could see like a massive
Okay.
wave coming.
They actually covered this in the tactical manual for next gen.
Okay.
The reason why this doesn't happen is because it's a failsafe for if you have shuttles coming in. Because if a shuttle comes in and the shields go up at the same time, you'll kill the shuttle. So you can't just, it's not automated.
And transport.
It's like a health
too.
and safety
Transporter too.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they get hit with the wave. So after like the dust settles, the science officer Dimitri, who's heavily prominent in that Voyager episode with Tuvok, he says it's coming from Praxis. It's a Klingon moon. It's kind of an allegory to the Chernobyl incident in the Ukraine, like a big nuclear thing exploding. That their key energy facility has detonated and Praxis is destroyed. And then they get this like political message. I love Sulu's or George Takei's performance here. He's like, an incident. Yeah, and he's so bad. And Janice Rand says,
Should we report it?
should we report this? He's, are you kidding?
I
Then
was kind of like, come on, give the woman the lame line. I don't know.
do you think that they set Janice Rand up there to look dumb?
Yes. Yes.
Well, okay. Last time we saw Janice Rand in one of these movies, she was killing people on a transporter pad, not knowing how to work a transporter.
that's right.
It's true.
Yes,
She's
yes.
shown how incompetent she can be. So therefore they had to dumb it down.
So then we get the boardroom scene. This is kind of what sets up the whole movie. That yes, this Klingon moon explodes. It's a key energy production facility, and I think it's like maybe this is like a month or two later that we get this whole this meeting where what we learn in this meeting is that Spock has been in negotiations with the Klingon chancellor since this happened about the idea of coming to some kind of a peace treaty, because as we learn that they spend so much money on their military and everything else, they can't afford the hostility. In order to clean up this mess, their planet has this large ecological disaster. They need to shift their attention there, but they don't want to do that unless the Federation is willing to like dismantle their entire fleet and facilities along the neutral zone. And it's not a super popular idea.
I thought they mentioned the ozone layer, and I thought that was very appropriate for the time. What was going on in
Yeah, it's
On our
poisoning their ozone layer.
ozone layer problem? Yeah.
'Cause I remember around this time when I was a kid, 1991,
There was
it
a
was all
hole.
about the ozone layer.
There still is a hole.
No, they don't talk about the ozone layer anymore.
Occasionally, I've heard.
But that's because we kind of moved away from hairsprays and things like that. Wasn't that what was killing?
CFCs.
It doesn't matter. It's just I'm just saying. What do you guys think of this? Like even like what Spock is trying to do here, like what his plan is, because it seems like Kirk and all the rest of them very skeptical. Imagine the U.S. like saying, okay, after the end of the Cold War, we're going to destroy all of our nuclear missiles and we're going to do all these things in order to make the Russians feel like at ease.
I think he was trying to make peace.
I
Right.
think he was trying to make peace, but what I found fascinating about that scene was that him and Kirk are buddies or good friends, and he's stunned. He walks into that boardroom like, what are we doing here, and what's going on, and what are you doing, Spock? And like that was kind of baffling to me. That Kirk had no clue. I'm not saying he would know the dirty details, but he had no clue what was coming.
No heads up.
Well,
it's almost like they're kind of keeping him out of the loop for a reason. Because let's be honest, he's very forward with how he feels about Klingons.
but then they also send him on this mission.
Didn't
Yeah.
they start the
That's-
meeting
that-
saying
that's
it
because
was-
of
it was all
convenience again.
classified? I think it was classified. I think they started the meeting saying this is classified.
Yeah, it's a classified
So we
meeting.
couldn't tell
And
certain ahead of time.
what I kind of brushed over was the fact that like they kind of mentioned that they're retiring. This is kind of like the end of their careers. Like the Enterprise is about to kind of be retired, and they're all like Scotty mentions he's bought a boat, and they're all. It's very clear that this is probably like the end of the line, and they're kind of ready to approach their golden years. And this whole thing, like where I think Kirk is legitimate in saying like you should have trusted me. You should have talked to me about this. Why am I here? Why are you volunteering our crew for this mission? Even if I don't necessarily agree with the disarmament of the Starfleet force.
Do you think it was like Spock wanting to just for once shine a little bit? Like he's always been second fiddle to Kirk.
I think it's a little bit of that. I think it's also. I think that Spock. Well, he says he's planning to like leave Starfleet. It's clear. Well, we know where he ends up going after this. He becomes an ambassador. He kind of follows in his father's footsteps largely, and he's looking to become a diplomat. So I think that this is his like dipping his toe into that, getting like kind of setting up his next career, his next job a little bit.
I don't
I
think
really
Spock
like-
really respects Kirk. That's how I feel about the scene. Like he's like, you're gonna make the wrong call anyway. So I think Spock is kind of saying like, I'm just making this decision without you, and you can piss off. Like,
Yeah, Spock is like, I'm going to force you to do the right thing.
Right.
right.
I agree because it was out of character. For me, that whole scene was a little out of character.
I did like at the end of the scene how everyone left the room and they're kind of above them, and you see that they're on different sides of this massive table. It was just like they were so far apart.
I think that's
And
intentional.
Yeah, it was
That's
intentional, but
intentional,
but I liked it.
And quite famously, this scene here ends with Spock's like, here, I got the clip here.
They are dying.
Let them die.
They're done. And so when he said that, let them die, because apparently Shatner didn't think Kirk would say that, right? And so he said, I'll say
Kirk
it.
wouldn't say let them die? Absolutely, you would.
That's not how Shatner felt about it. He thought
Yeah, but he's pissed off. He's still
Captain
pissed off
Kirk's a
all the
hero,
fun that he only
right?
knew for like 20 minutes.
well, Captain Kirk's the good guy. He's the hero. He's not supposed to say stuff like that, right? I just understand where Shatner's coming from a little bit. So the thing was that he only agreed to even say the line if you kind of like the way that Shatner played it was like, let them die. And then he went like, you know what? No, I don't mean that, right? But Nicholas Meyer, the director, just cut it
out.
cut it right where he was like, let them die, right? And Shatner was pissed about this whole thing. I think it makes Shatner more human. I think that, or Kirk, it makes the Kirk character more human. Right?
It's a raw emotion thing.
Jeff, was there something?
Spock still wanted him to be the captain of this mission.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe Spock wants them to have one final great thing that they're going to do together. I don't know. Maybe there's some vanity going on here with Spock.
Let's face it, Shatner probably hammed up that, oh, I don't mean that moment of that take.
And they had to get it out.
And it was like, I can't keep this. This is terrible.
Well, especially with Shatner coming off as the director of the last movie. Maybe he felt like he had license to sort of say what Kirk, and we talked about last week where McCoy or Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley didn't feel like they would betray Kirk in that scene sort of towards the end. And so they changed it. So I guess there was a little bit of precedent here, but Nicholas Meyer's back. He was the director of Wrath of Khan. He was also a co-writer on Star Trek 4. So he's basically involved in all the good ones. And he's the one who put all this, he's the one who calls this movie The Undiscovered Country, wrote this screenplay. And
which, let's be honest, is the best named out of all of the original series movies.
Wasn't that supposed to be
I love
the name
Wrath
of
of Khan was
Wrath
originally going to be
Khan,
called
yeah.
The Undiscovered Country.
Yes.
But they were like, no, that's dumb. And by the time he got to 6, he had a little more clout and he was able to kind of get that
Well, the
name.
problem with the Wrath of Khan name is like it kind of gives away what's going on in the movie. Like you already know it's going to be Khan. Like,
a little bit, yeah. I think it was
there's
also
no
at the
real
time.
surprise.
Wrath of Khan comes out right before Return of the Jedi. But originally they were going to call it Revenge of the Jedi.
Yes.
So, and then it's, yeah.
The thing I like about the name of this is I remember when I was a young man, and I remember when, this movie actually came out, and I remember thinking Undiscovered Country. What the fuck does that mean, right? Like, oh, they're going to find some new country or something. It's like, but it's obviously a metaphor. So
means the future.
it actually, I think it means more peace than anything.
No, I
Mm,
thought they said it's the
It's
future.
It means the future.
Well, the
I mean,
future piece, yeah.
the vision for peace. That's what Gorkon has.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to talk about this scene, like the opening here, like this tension that
We're 20 minutes in, and we're like 5 minutes into the movie.
This later on in the movie,
I'm not on the schedule,
Valera-
Jody.
later on in the movie, Valera says, "Didn't you say let them die?" How does she know that? She wasn't there. That was at the end of the class.
That is a plot hole, unless Spock told her.
Yeah, that is something. That's a negative.
Yeah, let's just say Spock told her. Moving on.
Okay.
Well,
Ro-
Spock is her mentor, right? So I'm sure they talk about everything. So
And Spock and Kirk aren't that close.
No, they're not. This movie proves it, by the way. They're really not that close of friends. Like Rathacon has been proven to be bullshit. That's why it doesn't hold up. I find as well. Like it's more about their relationship from the show, and then when Spock becomes like new Spock after Search for Spock, he doesn't really respect Kirk all that much. I mean,
Even though he saved him. Yeah.
He saved him when
he went back and got him.
Kirk saved Spock. Yes.
Yeah.
No, Kirk respects Spock. Spock does not respect Kirk.
no.
Well, that's my point, though. Spock, he wouldn't had a second kick at the can if it wasn't for Kirk.
I agree, but he's ungrateful.
Yeah,
He's a
okay,
Vulcan.
that's better.
Vulcans,
That's better.
like,
He's
logic
great.
can be ungrateful, right? Like, he's just.
yeah.
Vulcans can
Very
be
void of
dicks.
Emotions, empathy, sympathy, all those things, right?
Okay. I'm trying to remember what the next scene is.
Oh, you should have taken notes.
Oh, there. Go up on the
Ah.
Enterprise. This is where we meet Valeris and we meet Kim Cattrall, one of many Canadian actors in this to prominently feature. So Kim Cattrall, we got William Shatner, we got, of course, Christopher Plummer, and James Doohan. And James Doohan.
Johnny.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is kind of where we first meet Valeris, and she's like the new hotshot, lieutenant. She's kind of Spock's apprentice, and Kirk
See, to
orders
me,
out.
I think they intentionally made her what she is, though. Like, I remember, like, even the first couple times I watched this movie, I'm like, I fucking hate her. Like, I don't like her.
I agree.
Like, I already don't like her.
I
No,
agree.
but I think that was
I love her.
intentional.
I love her character.
I'm like, just
Oh, her
just-
character's great, but like,
Yeah.
you
But
don't
just-
want to like her.
just that first scene, how he says whatever the command is he gives to get out of space dock, right? And Ahora's going, "Oh, don't go there," and you're and all that kind of stuff, right? She right from the beginning, she's like, she's not a new crew member. She's like, I'm in your face.
But I was
Well-
thinking, like, didn't Kirk learn his lesson with the Kirstie Alley character quoting regulations? And then there you go again at the beginning of a movie, and he just
But is there
says, "To
some
hell
sort of
with
unwritten
regulations."
law that they're not allowed to question their superiors? Like,
That's called the military.
well, yeah, but even then, you still have the ability to do that. Like, it's not like it's unheard of.
No, I agree.
Like, I think that's played up a little too much in this movie, but it's, I think really what it is I think she was trying to show her logical side. Like, it was supposed to be like, well, but why is he asking me this? This is not regulation. It didn't come off that way. It came off as arrogant and, douchebaggery, but.
Right, and the scene right after this is that Kirk doing the personal log, talking about how he'll never trust Klingon, or I've never trusted Klingons and I never will. I'll never forgive them for the death of my boy. All that kind of stuff. And then
staring at a glamour shot of his son.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was literally like the casting shot.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and by this point, the actor who played David had also passed away. And not that much before this, I think, maybe a year or so before this. And so I don't know, maybe they were paying a little bit of tribute to him with that.
Maybe it's a bit of a homage, yeah.
Yeah, because they had worked together on obviously on Rathacon. The director had been part of that, the same director from those two movies. And so I think it gives Kirk this real like legitimate apprehension with this whole mission. Like I think that the fact, like we talked about, what does David Marks's death really mean to Kirk? That he didn't raise him, wasn't as close to him, but I think that it does mean something. It gives Kirk you understand where he's coming from more so than the Klingons are just like these old bad guys that he doesn't trust. That he has a real personal vendetta in this. And
well, you almost kind of see the more humane side of him, like the side where he's not this infallible captain. Like he's this guy who's just pissed off. Like he's pissed off. He's pissed off, which also kind of leads the audience into thinking, well, yeah, what happens later on obviously is an issue, but it makes perfect sense when you think about it. Like, why wouldn't they think Kirk was the one who did this? Like that kind of thing. So,
but don't you feel like that gives Kirk a real strong arc in this movie? It's probably why we think it's one of the best movies, because he kind of he comes around and you understand why he comes around.
Oh, for sure. Like it shows more humanity with him. I think this is probably one of the only original series Star Trek movies that actually shows Kirk the way he probably should be portrayed. It's always over the top with him. This movie wasn't really that over the top for him when you think about it. Like there's not a lot of times when you're thinking, oh well, there goes Kirk overacting it all up and hamming it up again. Like there wasn't a lot of that in this movie compared to the other ones.
Except for when he's acting against himself. That is
yes.
I have a theory about that when we get to that, but I have a theory that Kirk, the imposter, was the one, like the real Kirk got vaporized, and then the entire after that is the shapeshifter.
Is Amon
Amon the whole time after, because then he becomes not prejudiced. He's cool with the Klingons. Like everything after that is not real Kirk. That's my theory.
Wow.
Maybe prison reformed him. Who knows?
Perhaps. Yeah. Well, yeah, Kirk wasn't around for much longer after this, if that is the case, Jeff. But the next scene is is Spock and Valeris talking in his quarters. He shows her that painting, which is the expulsion from paradise, and I think it's a reminder to me that all things must end. And he tells her that he wants her to be his successor. He's like, I'm leaving the Enterprise. I want you to take over.
Does he have that power? Isn't that like Starfleet's call?
I think so, but maybe he can put a word in.
I'm sure he can put a word in, but that's what I like about this movie, though, because this movie kind of shows the what's going to happen. Like it's like these guys aren't infallible. They aren't going to be flying around the universe for the rest of their lives. Like these guys are done. Like we're done now. Like this is it. And I think it was a nice way to kind of like show. It was almost like a passing of a torch thing, which we knew obviously she wasn't going to be in the next movie, but we didn't even know what the next movie would be, but we knew that this was the movie that they should have had. Whereas 5 was supposed to be the last movie for them. But it was almost like they kind of said, you know what, 5 is terrible. We got to do this again and do it right.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe the Next Generation helped with that, because by this point, the Next Generation was more popular.
And what season are we in? It was
we're probably 3 or 4 or
3?
something like that. Yeah.
We'd be in 3 at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if they would pick up any aliens that were on Next Gen, for example, like a Ferengi or something. But I was looking in the well, I guess Ferengi's been
but we got Michael Dorn in this movie.
Michael Dorn, but I was just looking in the crowd.
Not only do we have Michael Dorn, he's actually called Worf in this as well.
Right, he's supposed to be Worf's grandfather. Is that what he is? Yeah.
Right. So it's a lineage name thing. Yeah.
But they do that in 4 when they do the bar scene when they're trying to get a freighter or something. There's all kinds of aliens in that bar.
Yeah.
I don't know the names of them, but there were all kinds of different aliens.
You're thinking Star Trek 5, yeah. There's a bar in Star Trek 5.
There's 5 in the bar, yeah.
5, okay. When they're trying to
last week.
Yeah.
It's okay. We all want to forget 5 anyway.
Well, like when they're in the prison, I thought that guy might have been a Nausicaan. But you said it wasn't a Nausicaan, but the really tall guy with
the guy that had his balls in his knees?
No, the other guy the first got it that wanted his code.
Oh, the guy wanted his code at the beginning.
Yeah. But I just think it would have been cooler if they tied back a few more next gen aliens to this movie.
Right. But. It's after this scene that finally the Enterprise rendezvous with with Kronos 1, which is like the Air Force One. It's meant to be like the allegory to it's carrying Gorkon and his cabinet to this meeting. So Kirk comes up and says, "Put him on screen." And there's this ominous, the music, it's tension, it's suspense, and he goes, and he's like, "Hello." And David Warner plays Gork in it, and I think it's just worth noting. He was in the last movie too. Do you guys? He was that human ambassador guy that ends up with the Romulan at the end of it. He was also the Cardassian with the 4 lights, but he shines in this movie. They said that I think he said he played it very like Abraham Lincoln. Like he's the Abraham Lincoln of Klingons, right? With the Gorgon.
Yeah.
And so he invites him over.
And maybe like I found like just parallels from politics that he kind of represents the Russians who are kind of coming to this peace with the Americans, and Chang kind of represents the Chinese.
Yeah, actually, I think he did. He was a bit of Lincoln, but he was also a bit of Gorbachev too, right?
Yeah.
You know, because
I think Christopher Lloyd played this part amazing.
Plummer. Yeah.
Played this part amazingly.
Well, you're thinking of that's the other Klingon.
That's the other Klingon.
Chang.
Yeah, I
but
didn't
just
like
on Gorkin.
the character, but I liked the way he played him. Like you really didn't like this guy.
There's not really anybody in this movie that I can honestly say I really was all that hatred of, like when it comes to acting. Like everybody, I didn't like the guy from the '70s show,
Red.
playing the guy with the big
President
guy. Yeah, I didn't like him very much, but I understand why he was there and I get it. But that's I think another reason why everybody looks at this movie as being a decent movie, because we kind of get everything almost right. Like there's still room for improvement. Don't get me wrong, but
I noticed some horrific acting and maybe this is why I noticed, because everything else is good, of extras. Like when they're in the kitchen scene, I was like looking at the background people, and I'm like, oh my god, like they're just, the extra acting was horrible a few times.
We're just watching the actual dinner scene, and like they're Christopher Plummer's taking out his napkin, and he's like, "What is this thing?" And he like throws it in his lap, and he's like, "What the fuck is this?"
But there's a lot of that in this movie. There's a lot of like kind of like little sight gags to a degree, especially when you're looking at the relation between the Klingons and obviously the humans. In this scenario, you see a lot of differences even over the table, which is kind of interesting, I thought.
Yeah. Well,
the fact that they keep talking about Shakespeare and talking about stuff that was 400 years ago, something like that. More, I guess, And
but Beth, you haven't experienced Shakespeare until you've heard it in the original Klingon.
Oh no, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah, they reference
people. I'd have to disagree.
They reference so many Shakespeare plays in that, like they were. There's just in the whole movie, Julius Caesar, Macbeth. There's a bunch of them. Hamlet, There's a bunch. They don't just stick to one Shakespeare.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
Choose from all the different.
But Kang obviously is clearly a fan of Shakespearean stuff, right? So
more than a fan, I'd say.
Yeah, it got to be a little much.
It was a little
because it's like it's so
to show how he was trying to be relatable.
Yeah.
Like
right.
It almost they're trying to make it not look like Kang has anything to do with it. That's really what it comes down to, right?
I had heard somewhere that Christopher Plummer wouldn't do it unless he could add in all that Shakespeare.
Oh, really?
But that wasn't
I think
supposed
it's
to
fine,
be.
personally. I'm okay.
I bet you that the
fine.
studio didn't necessarily want as much of that, but I can tell you that the director definitely did, and so did the actors. And I think it really works. And I think that scene with here, I just want to talk about this line, because after he invites them to the dinner, we hear Chekhov say,
"Guess who's coming to dinner?"
And that line was supposed to originally be said by Uhura. But Nichelle Nichols didn't want to do it because it's kind of like an allegory to the Sidney Poitier. I think there's a movie called "Guess Who's Coming to Dinner."
Yeah, it's
right,
a
which is like
title.
the first interracial relationship or whatever on screen in a movie. And so, I think we were talking about that earlier. Was that fitting that she refused to say that line? Is it better that Chekhov had it?
I'm with her. I don't even know if I like it. There was a lot of. They even mentioned a lot of racism or
prejudices,
bigotry,
but that's what it's supposed to show, though. Like the biggest prejudiced person on this entire crew is Kirk. Like, Kirk is wicked prejudiced. Like
all of Star Trek is one of the most racist shows ever.
Yes,
everybody acts according to their race all the time.
Sometimes they stray away from it, but it's very rare. But I think that was supposed to show this.
I don't. Yeah.
Well, and these are like their oldest enemy too, right? Like the Klingons, right? Like that's the one
Kirk has
we all
been
think of.
with these guys for his entire career. So he's obviously skeptical on who they are and what they are, and they also killed his boy that he knew for 10 minutes. But fuck, that drives me nuts every time I think about
Still
it.
his son.
I don't care.
You should care.
It's stupid.
What are you talking
He was
about? It's still
obviously in love with him because he has that. Really
Well, he's got the glamour shot. I think if
he's
anything,
got that picture in his quarters.
His name was David, guys.
Yeah.
He's a David.
It's
You're going to
that
show some
one, yeah.
respect to David Marcus. Okay.
Anyway.
The
Let's
transporter
roll.
scene when those Klingons first come off that transporter pad is the next thing, and it's so good. The tension. They're just like, oh, let's get this over with. Speaking of which, why does Scotty in this scene, like he's working the transporter controls, he's behind like this glass thing? I've never seen this before in any Star Trek.
It's a sneeze shield.
It's like a sneeze shield for the transporter worker. I don't know. It's just never stuck out.
I have COVID.
Yeah,
Be
he has
careful.
COVID. I don't know why it was there, but it was there. But when they come through and like they're all beaming in, and then you see like Chang just kind of like look at you in the transporter while in mid beam. It's scary. It's intimidating, right? Gorkon gets off, and we don't really know what to make of Gorkon, and then Chang, Christopher Plummer, first comes on the scene.
That was a safety issue that if they come off with guns a-blazing or however they kill them, that at least Scotty would be behind a protected shield and beam them away. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, in Next Gen, we know that they have the ability to detect if there's weapons on them, and they can have them removed or screwed up or whatever it is before they. So
And they have a
I'm wondering
force
if they already
field.
had that technology. Who knows?
It's just a part of the
There's a
set, guys. We don't need to overanalyze that, I think.
Well, I would agree more with Jeff on this one. Yes.
Four.
I was just an offhand comment, but it's
It is interesting though.
Offhand comments make this 3 hours long. Let's go.
this is 3 hours long because you never stop talking.
Both the talk. That's part of it.
3 hours long. Jeez.
All right. The dinner scene. In the dinner scene, look, this goes badly. But this is where we're getting all of the Chang Klingon. Gorkon says,
You have not experienced Shakespeare until you have read him in the original Klingon.
in the original Klingon. Just like the fact that Christopher Plummer and William Shatner had done Shakespeare in Stratford, Ontario in like the 1950s, that Shatner had been the understudy for Christopher Plummer, and they get to now be in this scene together, reciting Shakespeare and Hitler and a few things to each other while they're having this conversation of what does peace really mean? How do we come to ground? Because we don't like you, you don't like us. We're afraid that this is going to be the end of our culture. That that by coming into peace with you, we're going to lose who we are. And Spock is the whole time trying to play peacemaker and trying to be diplomat here, and his crew is not making it easy. And by the end, I think Kirk realizes it did not go so well. Can we find another way to screw up tonight? I think is how he feels by the end of it.
Yeah.
And it was by this point in the movie that I was like, they would never make a movie like this now. Like, we're like, by this point, like half an hour into the movie, and there's been like no action. There's been no things. Like, it would be unfathomable. But like, this movie has so much tension build, but it starts to pick up right after this. But I just thought that was worth noting. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, they do reference the Neville Chamberlain "Peace in Our Time" quote, which is also referenced in the Avengers, which is about trying to make peace when peace shouldn't be made, which is basically Kirk's position. Kirk looks at Spock as a Neville Chamberlain figure, and maybe rightfully so, but at the same time, Spock is determined to peace. It has to be peace, because then we'll just get into a war if we do not. And then that's what happens in World War II. So it's all these different metaphors are being placed in the scene.
Well, we hear like Cartwright say in the beginning,
the opportunity here is to bring them to their knees. Then we'll be in a far better position to dictate terms.
Right. Like Colonel West says, we can clean their chronometers if we need to. Like the Federation wants to attack. We know that the Romulans are kind of involved in this conspiracy, and they want sort of the Federation to attack. And what about the Klingons,
Well,
right? To like change
people in
balance
the
of power.
Federation want to attack. I don't think the whole Federation wants the attack.
No, individuals.
Or this wouldn't have even happened.
Yeah, that there's conspirators at like the head of all of these governments and military organizations that are involved in this conspiracy.
The thing that I like about the dinner scene is it sets up these characters in a way that you think you know who they are, when in fact you actually don't. Which I think makes it a very powerful scene, because you're sitting there and you're going, Kang, you know, it looks like he's, or is it Kang?
Chang.
Chang. You know, Chang, you know, he's a veteran, but you know, he's got the right intentions and he does want the peace. And then you find out later, obviously that's not the case, but you know, it's nice to be able to see that, and you see some of the relations between the two parties. You know, you see one person, they got a fork and they're like, what the fuck are we gonna do with this? Like, we eat with our hands, bitch, right? And then you have like, you know, the napkin, as I think Jeff was stating earlier.
Right. Oh, and the table manners. We saw.
Yes.
Oh, tell me, General, do you like Shakespeare? And he's just eating like the blue noodles or whatever out there. Ugh, I don't like these people at all. And then finally the night's over. So we get the sense that they drank a lot of Romulan ale.
They had a lot of drinking. Yeah.
They had a lot of drinking. My understanding of Romulan ale is that it's basically like stronger than whiskey. So that they were drinking full on glasses of that stuff. Yeah. Maybe it's diluted. Who knows? But by the end,
Romulan ale spritzers, I think.
Yeah. What is it?
A lot of them have hangovers later. That's all we know.
But some of them went straight to work. Am I getting the timeline right?
Yeah, no, there's.
Back to the bridge.
They didn't all go back to the bridge though.
Some of them did. Right?
See, I got the impression that they all went pretty much the night was done. Some of them partied throughout the day, to get to morning kind of thing.
Yeah,
so, some of them did go, I guess.
When Kirk gets after they say goodbye in the transporter room, and Chang leaves Kirk with this.
In space, all warriors are cold warriors.
So he's like, "Okay, goodbye, Chang. Goodbye, Gorkon. Whatever." And he says, Gorkon says, "If we're gonna be able to live in this world, in this new world, this brave new world, our generation's gonna have the hardest time living in it."
Which makes sense.
Really poignant line, I think it's important to remind ourselves that change is scary, right? And
people who lived through World War II, had a different outlook on it than we do.
Mm-hmm. And then Kirk's kind of lamenting the night. No more Romulan ale at diplomatic functions as a rule moving forward, and that's when he gets called to the bridge to say, "Hey, there's a radiation surge." He goes, "From where?" And he's like, "From us." And before they know it, boom! There's a photon torpedo at Kronos 1, and they're all scrambling. There's madness. There's confusion. We see that the gravity field on the ship goes out, and they're all floating around. And before they can really react, they fire another torpedo goes off, and they're hit again. And now things are really going bad.
But do you think when you watch the movie, and I know for you, Dave, and lots of us, long time ago, I was like expecting something to happen at dinner. Like the fact that they beamed back, I thought, oh, okay, that's anticlimactic. Nothing happened.
Well, you thought there would be a fight or something. Like there would be some sort of disagreement, and then there would be some anger. And I think they intentionally tried to do that. I think that's there's always this kind of level of tenseness going on during the entire scenes, right? So it's like you kind of get the gist of that, yeah.
Right. The guys beam over in those spacesuits, right? And they start shooting people left and right, and you're like, "What is going on?" And this is where the movie.
This brings up my first bad point about this movie is the god awful purple blood. That blood is terrible. That's CG. Even in 91, we had the ability to make fucking Terminator 2, and we had to do that blood. Come on.
James Cameron was way ahead of everybody. He always is. That's what James Cameron does.
Oh, I see.
So, my understanding, just that you think it looks bad, or that the color?
Oh, it looks
even Next Gen was ahead of this. Like by this time, Worf didn't have pink blood.
No, that was something they made them change for this movie because they said that the blood was too harsh. So once they changed it to pink, the critics were allowing to get. It was all about getting like a PG-13 rating or whatever.
Yeah, it was done intentionally. I'm not even talking about the color of it. Like I can get away with the color; it doesn't really bother me. It's the actual effect of the blood. Like they take shots and then like you see like little CG spurts of blood, and then the blood just kind of like orbs up and then kind of like floats away, right? It's just that whole CG just looks terrible. And I remember even thinking when I first watched the movie, I'm like, this looks like shit.
Even in 1991.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I watched it this morning. It didn't stand out to me as that bad.
You must not have the kind of clarity that I had then, because
I guess not. I guess not.
It's brutal.
It doesn't look good, Jody, but at the same time, for the time, I think that whole scene holds up.
Yeah.
And it's a good scene.
But I have to find some
were
sort
just
of negative in this
paintballing.
movie, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
What's that, Kevin?
It looks like they were just out paintballing. Yeah, that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, it's not bad. I think it's like one of the only scenes I can remember in Star Trek up to this point that had no gravity in it.
I was thinking, like, what other? I'm sure there have maybe in Voyager. What other Star Trek episodes or movies have we seen? Zero
First
G.
Contact. First Contact.
First Contact. Yeah.
That's after this.
Simulate this.
Right. Yeah. It's just it's nice to be reminded we're in space.
Yeah.
And
that whole part of that is fine. It's just the blood CG just was terrible for me. I hated it. I rather have them not even shown it. Personally,
I
don't think it adds.
It wasn't that bad.
No, it was bad.
Klingons are getting their arms blown off. They're getting shot. And eventually Gorkon gets it, and those guys leave. And it's at this point, I guess they kind of are able to get their ship kind of back online, get the gravity back online. We see everybody fall to the ground, and
Including the blood.
Chang calls over, in a great performance.
Why did you do this?
Why did you do this? We come on peace, and you betray us. I shall blow you out of the stars for this.
Now,
right?
I have to admit, this scene is probably one of the best scenes that I've ever seen Shatner do. His confused was amazing in the scene. He was just like, what do we do?
More fuchsia, I guess.
Yeah, well, he surrenders, right? Because he's like, once they're coming around to strike him back, and they say, we surrender. So he does the honorable thing here instead of having a fight with them. And he says, I'll come over and I'll try to figure out what's happening. So McCoy goes with him, and they try to save Gorkon, but it's to no avail. And
you see him pounding on the fucking chest, and and I have to admit the blood on that looked really good. I thought.
Yeah, because that was real.
I guess
that was in the CG blood.
I would assume.
What do you mean that was real?
Well, it's not a CG. It's not a computer effect.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just like somebody found like fuchsia shampoo and put it all over his body. Yeah. But
like the slime
I just like seeing McCoy sitting there and he's working the body and he's trying to like get this guy out of cardiac arrest. He finally gets him back up, and then obviously he does a little whisper scene and says something to Kirk. So.
All right, and so now they're arrested. We did mention that Spock does throw that little patch on him before he leaves the ship, though. So
yes, the little tracking thing. Yeah,
the meridian strip.
Notices that it's not so little.
It's pretty noticeable.
It's pretty big. Yeah,
but I guess it's something they picked up along the way. We never see one of these again in Star Trek, but it's convenient. It allows Spock to track where Kirk is going. At this point, I think Spock is like, there's a conspiracy. I don't know who I can trust, so I'm going to kind of keep certain things.
Rightfully so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And they get arrested, and then we get the return of John Shuck as the Klingon ambassador. Who, if you don't remember, he was the one in Star Trek 4 who said,
James T. Kirk, renegade and terrorist.
And he starts this one going,
the Chancellor of the High Council is
dead.
The result of an unprovoked attack while he traveled to see you under a flag of truce on a mission of peace.
So
he's not wrong.
You just love that guy so much.
I love that guy so much. I don't know why. Every time He's actually been in Babylon 5 a lot too. That
This
actor.
is why
Babylon 5.
Babylon 5.
You know what I really do like
Fuck
about his
Babylon
speech, though,
5.
in that scene is him when he asks Kirk a question. He goes, "Don't wait for the translation," which is a direct.
That's in the trial.
It's a direct reference to the Cuban Missile Crisis and what was going on in the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, and the Adlai
Stevenson. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much political here. It's not even funny. I love this movie.
Right. But so what did you say? You didn't like Kurtwood Thompson read from that 70s show as the Federation president?
No.
Sherwood Smith.
And I love him as an actor. Like, don't get me wrong. The guy's great. I didn't like that character at all.
It is a weird look.
He looks
It's not
almost
even really the look that bothers me that much. It's just how he acted and everything in it. Like, it just the dialogue was clearly not written very well for that, I thought.
He looks like Pai Mei from Kill Bill 2.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
He does actually, yeah.
Yeah, well, we'd seen that species before. That's just how they kind of look. I don't know. They look almost too Klingon to me. I would have picked maybe a different species to make them, like Andorian or something. But whatever. We see Sarek's in this scene, so like they're trying to like salvage this peace talk basically because things have really gone bad.
They sent Kirk. Like, come on, you knew it was gonna go bad anyway.
Right. Cartwright's like, we'll go in there. They get Colonel West, which is played by Rene Auberjonois, who went on to play Odo.
Yeah.
He comes in with his plan. We're going to get in there. We got a strike force. We're going to get him out. He comes in with his flip chart paper. I was like, okay, is this flip chart paper? Okay. He's got his laser pointer. It's quite something.
Great technology back in
Yeah.
They spend all that tech money on the blood.
Yeah, and he goes, Federation president asks him, what if you start a war?
Then, quite frankly, Mr. President, we can clean their chronometers.
So there's a lot of Federation people here itching for war. And later on, we see that character is the assassin who tries to kill the president.
Again, a very a direct reference to the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
They really are setting that moment up here. And it's good. It's good tension. I mean, the movie 13 Days does it very well as well. I mean, and I think if you watch that movie and this movie back to back, you'd be like, they're very similar.
Do you think that's why they used the flip chart? Because that was like more of a reference to Cuban Missile Crisis?
It might have been. You might, or
Good theory.
Jody said they ran out of money.
Yeah, and like this whole they say they're going to move the peace conference to a neutral location that ends up being Kittimer. But the CNC guy, Bill, I don't know his last name, he says, Mr. President, those guys have literally saved this planet. He goes, well, and they'll save them again by standing on trial. And then we get our delicious trial scene.
Okay,
Like that.
I got one question. You mean to tell me when they arrest these guys that they don't search them and they don't find this patch on his back?
The Klingons are that area.
That's what we're led to believe, yes.
The Klingons are like, it doesn't matter. He could have a fucking gun on him. We're still better than him.
Well, somehow they're not able to detect it with their scanners. I don't know why, but they're not able.
Some sort of yeah.
It's convenient.
It's
okay,
convenient.
It's the biggest case of that in this movie, I'd say, because it's the
He should have injected him, with like a needle or something with a tracker that way. That would have made more sense.
And why did Spock just have that in his hand? Does he just walk around with that in his hand all the time?
He must.
I think Spock's like, I gotta get these trackers. He probably buys them off of some website or something and gets a whole bunch of them because he's like, this fucker constantly causes me shit. I gotta go do something. I gotta track him.
They could have written like a mind meld, and that's how he would have been able, like a telepathy or something. That would have been fine. I don't know. They wrote themselves into a little bit of a box with the track.
It's a bit dumb, yeah.
Yes.
I did start this off saying that even though I think it is the best movie, there still is flaws, and that is one of them.
Every movie's perfect. But I think that this holds up well. The trial, the whole trial scene. Let's talk about that. It's a long scene. They go kind of over all the events that we've kind of already seen, but it works so well. It seems so scary.
I thought the set was awesome.
The set is so awesome with like that cylinder thing, that judge with the little
the sparky gavel.
Sparky gavel.
Yeah.
And just all the Klingons, and they've got their big red pitchforks or whatever they are. They're like Kirk, and you're just like, holy, they are in trouble now, right? Like they are in the heart of the belly of the beast. And Chang is the prosecutor, which I think is a smart move. Just gives more interactions between the villain and the hero and Kirk.
Well, you start seeing kind of a different side of Chang, right?
Right. Oh well, yeah,
This
we
is
started
the
seeing
vengeance
it.
side of Chang. Chang's like, you fucking killed one of my bros, man. You know.
But he killed him.
But did you really trust
He didn't.
Chang? I never trusted Chang.
No. I trusted Chang at the beginning.
Oh, did you? I did.
Yeah, there's no reason not to.
Charlie was evil.
What? Just because he's got an eye patch on, that's an issue?
Nah, he looks shifty.
He's a little shifty. I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, my Amazon package has just arrived.
Yes. Ashley loves the unboxing.
Yeah, it's happened, guys. I was hoping it was going to come before. It's just come now.
Is it your 2-foot tall table?
No, it's my it's my monitor booster stand.
Ever heard of a phone book or?
I'm using a book right now, but
box?
I'm using a book. Right?
You didn't seriously pay somebody money to make your monitor higher.
It's only $14. It was not that expensive. It came from China. It's made from steel. It's got bends and stuff. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the trial scene, and Jeff, what did you think of it?
Don't wait for the translation. Answer me now.
It's fantastic. The dialogue is so good. Like the overacting is not Shatner; it's Christopher Plummer, and he's much better at it.
I wouldn't even call it overacting. I think he just really got into it. It was good. I don't think it was overacting.
What I mean
I
is,
thought it met just nicely.
If Shatner did that same dialogue, you would call it overacting. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
what I mean. Like he's going for it, and it works because he's a good actor.
And it's nice. I always liked the fact that it was Michael Dorn in the scene playing the Worf grandfather character. He seems really earnest in his attempt to be like their defense attorney, right?
I agree with that.
Yeah,
He's trying. Yeah.
He's trying, like so he was.
Well, he doesn't have a lot to work with. Let's be honest.
Yeah, he's like, so if these Klingons, if these guys, the assassins were walking around with no gravity, how could they be walking? And they're like, well, they have magnetic boots. He's like, damn, I should have thought.
He's like, shit, I should have did the work.
If only I'd done some research on what actually happened in this case.
This is a thing?
Yeah.
Like, there's got to be some sort of logs or something. Like, you can't tell me the Klingon ship didn't have, like, security cameras or something.
Oh, I'm just going to get my box from the Amazon. I'll be right back. Jane, you run the show.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Let's run through a whole bunch of stuff quickly.
Okay. Let's move over a couple scenes.
I have a question.
And end of the movie.
Is Gorkon's daughter a part of the plot, or is she just kind of like an unwilling combatant, or like what's going on with her? Because do you guys know?
No, she doesn't seem like she's part of the plot.
They never
I
really
think she's
explain
part
it,
of the
do they?
plot, but I think they wanted you to think she was.
Yes,
Right.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. I never really was convinced about her till the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
She was innocent.
Yeah, the whole time you're thinking, yeah, she's probably working with them.
I thought her and Chang had a little bit something going on there or something, like.
Yeah. Well, once they play that whole thing from
Chicks
his
dig
vlog,
eye patches, I guess.
like that seals it, right? Because once they're like, he had motive. He said he could never forgive us.
Klingons, the uglier the better. The more attractive they are, right? So.
Yeah, and the fact that Christopher Plummer didn't want to wear full Klingon makeup, he asked for it to be scaled back and to be minimal. But I don't care; like it doesn't ruin it for me at all.
No.
He still looks pretty good though. Like he's still believable. I think
he doesn't look like as Klingon as
he's not a traditional Klingon. By
he doesn't have like as many ridges and.
But you also assume that maybe he was in some sort of accident or something because obviously he's got the one eye and his head's
Well,
different.
I always assumed he's one of those Klingons that used to look more human-like they were during the original series, and that he's since
From
maybe
the period
changed his
they don't
look.
talk about.
The thing they don't talk
the
about.
thing they don't talk about.
Right. Yes. Exactly. And so they get sentenced to
Asteroid of Rurapente.
the asteroid of Rurapente, the aliens' graveyard, as they call it. Scotty says you ought as well shoot him now and get it over with. It's not a fun place to be, and Rurapente is where I think we go next, right?
Yeah, pretty much. You see them going down the elevator and everything.
Rurapente thing was so well done. Like I thought that was like Siberia in space.
They literally call it a gulag in the movie, right?
do?
It is a gulag.
Like,
Yeah.
you are at the gulag, repente. There is no electronic frontier. There is no nothing. If you work, you will. If you don't work, you're coming to the surface. We're gonna throw you out here. And you're gonna die. This is not a fun place.
Yeah,
to be.
And then they show like a
Work
couple dead people
well,
already,
and you'll
and
be
then
treated
there's still
well.
a guy.
Work poorly, and you'll die.
And
That's
you'll
a
die.
great line. That whole scene.
Yeah,
Right to the point. This is what it is.
right. Those dogs with the weird, like, huge teeth going on.
Those are the Klingon dogs.
Klingon dogs.
I do think McCoy also says during the trial, he's like, for 27 years I've been the ship's doctor. In 3 months I'm going to stand down, and this is where you're going to send me.
Yeah, nice return.
Yeah, nice retirement gift is basically what he's saying.
What does he say?
It does add an element or a layer of stakes and drama to these characters. It's like, really, this is how they're going to end their story? Is they're going to
But I think that also adds to it. Like, it really, like, you're like, how are they going to end? Like, how are they? Is this really it for them? Like, obviously, we know it's in the end there's going to be some sort of happy ending, but it's like dire straits. It's very interesting, I think.
Right. While they're at Repente, Spock is like kicked it into high gear with this investigation. They've been ordered to go back to space dock. He's like, well, we're having technical difficulties. Just so he's refused. He's like, until I figure out what's gone on here, Spock won't rest.
But you don't get the impression that Spock's trying to do it to like save them. He's trying to figure out what happened. Like, to me anyway, that's how I felt. Like it didn't feel like he was trying to like help his comrades. It felt more like he was pissed off. He didn't understand what was going on. You know what I mean?
I always felt like he wanted to help his friends. Yeah, I think he felt responsible because he kind of he says to him, he's like, I got you into this mess, and he's like, well, you'll be responsible for getting me out of this mess and for saving my ass. So I think Spock has blinders on at that point, and he does a great job. He's like, well, let's figure this out. It says we fired those torpedoes, and Scotty says, no, we didn't fire those torpedoes. And he's like, I sympathize, Mr. Spock, but we got to figure this out. And an ancestor of mine said, if you take away any possibility, every other conceivable possibility, whatever is left, no matter how improbable, is the truth, which was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes. So I don't know if Spock's saying he's a descendant of Sherlock Holmes or if he's a descendant of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I guess it would have to be the latter because
I don't think he's saying any of that. He's just saying that he's putting on his detective hat. He's
literally, and I'm using the word literally because he literally says it. An ancestor of mine said this.
Yeah, he's kind of okay. That's like saying like an ancestor of mine is like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle because we're both human.
No, that's not the same.
Come on, you really? I don't necessarily think that's what he's not saying. Like my great grandfather said this. Why would he say my ancestor? Why wouldn't he just say my great grandfather or my great uncle? He would say that directly.
Well, it'd be further back than one or two generations.
Dave, maybe one of his ancestors did say it because he read it.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that he's saying that he
originated it.
No, he's a descendant of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle through Amanda Grayson. He said it in the movie. It's canon.
Wait.
No,
you really are saying you really do think that
She's
Spock
like,
is,
you're retarded.
Spock is related to
Yes.
Oh.
Spock is a descendant of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Okay, this is a new
I
theory.
think that's completely
He says it in this movie.
Okay.
I've never seen Shane look at you like that before. Like, what? You really mean
together either?
And this is a woman who I've seen support you over shit that makes no sense. And even she's going, you're really stretching this.
That's how it is.
Dave is correct. It's actually canon that he is descended from Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Thank you, Ashley Millard.
Is this on
It's canon because it's on some shitty wiki that some geek nerd fucking wrote.
Memory
Whatever.
Alpha?
It's
This
on
is where
Memory
you got.
Alpha.
It's on Memory Alpha.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the episode that we watched yesterday of the original series, they think is number 2, and it's number 10. Like,
It's not.
I'm not going with that.
Well, I think I won this
refuse.
argument. I think I won this one.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Then why do you have to say an ancestor?
An ancestor.
Well, he was just. He was. He was just. That wasn't the point on who said it. It was an ancestor of his. So.
Who cares? Let's move on.
All right.
Well, I guess I care. He's a descendant of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Great.
So,
let's move on.
All right.
They're off to Repente.
Well, no, they're at Repente, but they figured out that there's a bird of prey. That's basically the end of that scene. Is that a bird of prey that fires when it's cloaked must be the answer.
I gotta take a break.
All right.
What did he say?
I'm taking a break.
Intermission time.
Okay. They're at Repente and they meet Iman. Oh no, he's getting harassed by that guy.
Yeah.
Give me your coat, but he's speaking in the alien language and blah blah blah. And
Couldn't have made him any uglier if they tried. That guy that meets them up at the top, he was pretty on the money for that. Like,
yeah, and then they're all. It's supposed to be like this alien prison, the worst place you would ever want to go, and it's a frozen asteroid. And so yeah, Amon, is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
She was the one married to David Bowie. She's like an actor, more of a model, right?
She was a model.
She's a model and obviously actress.
I think she's quite good in this.
Yeah,
Yes.
great, very good.
Yeah,
Not bad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And her role is to kind of show him the ropes of prison, but
We can't hear you that well, Beth.
I said she has that exotic look to her, and then they make her eyes yellow, and
Yeah.
like just the whole,
She's got this cat-like look to her. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's all great. I love everything in Repente. I think it's like this really scary place to be, and she's like their salvation out. The cigarette that warms you up and helps out with all.
Which is basically weed, right? That's how I took
Oh
it.
yeah.
I took it as that as well.
Yeah, she didn't offer any weed to McCoy.
No, she only offered it to Kirk, not McCoy.
Yeah, so she's working Kirk hard.
Yeah.
Because they're American, they think it's a gateway drug.
We were talking about how when she gives Kirk the cigarette or whatever it is on Repente, it's like a toke, right? But she doesn't give any to McCoy.
Yeah,
I would have liked it.
yeah. Like, geez, Kobayashi Maru, Jim.
That's motherfucker.
And I love as they go back to Spock and then they're doing more investigation, trying to figure out where we have to visually inspect all of the torpedoes. And if they're all there, Scotty says to Spock, he's like, well, then we'll know that it wasn't us or whatever. He's like,
I have sensors in their tubes or something to know that they fired them or not. Like,
I don't know, but but I like how Spock says here, if I know Captain Kirk, he's already coming up with his escape plan. And then they go back to Repente and he's in a fucking fist fight with an alien, with that big blue alien.
Yeah, he's getting his ass kicked too.
And I like how McCoy's like loving it. He's like, you got him where you want him, Jim.
Just keep going. It's fine. You'll be good.
While he's being held back by like 6 aliens who will let him jump in and help.
Yeah.
And Kirk takes him out by kicking him in the knees, which is actually his balls. That's a great scene too. I love that.
Yeah, that's the silliness of this movie.
Good thing I found his knee. That was not his knee.
That wasn't his knee. Yeah.
Keeps their genitals in the same place. And then they end up. I can't remember. They end up that night in their bunks, right, and talking McCoy and Kirk, and they
say Jody, so then Kirk can get some action.
Yeah.
A piece of the action with Amon.
My favorite.
Come on, but it's an alien. He doesn't know it's a shapeshifter.
My favorite scene in this whole thing is when McCoy just sits up and looks at him and goes, "What is it with you?"
Yeah, what is it with you?
Yeah, no, that's so good. That whole scene. Well, it's where Kirk starts to put it together. He's like, people were really afraid. I was afraid of like there to be no more neutral zone. He starts to realize that there's people that he's been set up and who set him up, and he's kind of putting it together. Amon then shows up and was making out with him and got the escape plan and whatever.
See,
yeah.
And actually, you just kind of reminded me of this, Kevin. I think that's one of the reasons why I think this is my favorite movie is because, like, Voyage Home, which I've now changed my mind on, I do like it much more than I remember liking it. It's too much comedy. I think this movie, for a very serious movie, has just the right amount of comedy, and I think that's one of the reasons why I liked it. Like that scene, like that Kevin just talked about, like that's fucking hilarious. Like it literally is one of the most hilarious scenes in the entire movie, and a movie that's about really not a very, not a very funny subject. Turns out to be pretty funny. Yeah,
that was Benny. Okay, so
in this scene.
Right, and then it's pretty much right after, like, she's like, meet me in the elevator tomorrow morning. They end up and they go down for mining duty.
And now she looks different. Yeah,
and now she looks different. We realize she's a shapeshifter. Kirk makes some offhand remark. He's like, McCoy says, "Didn't you kiss that?" Don't remind me.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, like that's the worst thing he's ever done. Come on.
That's what I was waiting for you to say, Jody.
Yeah, like.
Would it have been cool had they made the shapeshifter like Odo's race?
That would have been neat.
Sure, but like, this is a few years before Deep Space Nine.
Before Deep Space Nine,
I think
yeah.
they would have if they made the movie a couple years later.
Mm-hmm. And the escape then starts after this. They go out into the snow, and and she has extra blankets for them and whatever. And that's how Kirk starts to figure out, like, how did she get these blankets? At this point, he knows that she's maybe fishy, but he's going along with it because he needs to get out. And the shots, that some of these aerial shots, I guess it was Alaska that they went to go shoot a lot of this stuff. It's amazing. It looks epic.
Did you look up the filming location?
Yeah, it was an Alaskan
Alaska.
glacier that they went to.
Yeah, it was very well done.
Yeah, just like the cinematographer guy, the cinematographer.
It has really good exposition, actually. Like the movie itself is framed very well.
It's really well shot. The music, the direction, everything is so good. And then Spock's like, oh, I can see that they're starting to get outside the beaming shield. I can see on my meridian strip here. So let's go in. We got to go into Klingon space. And they say, well, we can't just go in. We're going to get monitored. He's like, well, we'll just get out the Klingon encyclopedias, our dictionaries, and we'll be.
Like, what's he worried about? They've already created an international incident. I don't think it really fucking matters now. Like, just go in.
No, they just don't want to get blown out of the sky by the Klingons, right?
Yeah.
So,
It's a very important scene.
yeah, I just love that where he's like, oh no, we'll go in, and then the Klingon listening post, he's like, I can't speak Klingon, but he's like, what's that ship over? Markodok Reem. Like, we have to answer manually. I love this whole part. I love and so Uhura's trying to like work her way through Klingon from the book. And
I wish I could get as excited as you do, Dave.
I don't know.
We should do a one-man play and just reenact this whole movie.
I think I should.
I don't know about that, but anyway.
Well, you take it away, Jane. What happens next?
No. I think you would love it. I think you should do that one day.
Can we like stroke his ego anymore? Let's go.
Is that a compliment?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So well, it's exciting. I love it's like there's a little bit of comedy in this. There's all action. There's suspense.
I meant it as a compliment, Dave.
Yes.
Honestly, I did.
Right. But do you guys like that scene with the whole them having to fool those guys at the listening post?
Not nearly as much as you, but that's cool.
No, it was a good scene. It's again humor.
That makes me laugh when they're all laughing.
Yeah. Right. And they say this thing, and she's trying to figure out what to say, and they go, just laugh back. And she goes, and then as they turn off the button, they just go,
When I was watching that scene, I did think about the new movies and especially Into Darkness, where Zoe Saldana plays Uhura. Is like, do you know how to speak Klingon? She's like, 3 dialects, sir. And then in this movie, she's like reading it off a paper and older at this point, and she's like, I don't know what this is. So
and that's why Into Darkness is the worst
that
movie.
She knew how to speak Klingon,
They did definitely, and for me, play that up a bit because at the trial they have universal translators. So why wouldn't they have just figured out how to do it through a universal?
Apparently, they only have it in the court system.
Well, no, that's what they said at the beginning of that scene. They say that they'll immediately recognize that it's a universal translator.
Yeah, they did say that. Yeah,
that's why they have to answer verbally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. And then we're back to Kirk and McCoy and Martia on the planet. She lights that flare and starts the campfire. And then, I think it's not too long after this that Kirk punches her in the face pretty good. He goes, this is all a setup. Like where do you think these blankets come from? That flare, where'd she get that? They're coming to get us right now. And then she turns.
In the meantime, you have the scene where they go back to the ship and they're looking for the boots in the kitchen.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, yeah. So the investigation is ongoing, right?
Yeah. And the only reason why they even find the boots is because Scotty can hear, weird kind of, ding,
no,
ding,
he
ding.
finds the uniforms.
That was the uniforms.
Oh, it was the uniforms. Excuse me.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the boots themselves are in this guy's Dax's locker.
Oh, the guy with the screwed up feet that couldn't have worn them. Yeah.
Right. And you see, Valeris finds it. She goes, aha, because she's obviously the one who planted that boot in that locker. And and so they call up Dax, and he's like, what is the problem, Commander?
Yeah, this elaborate plan, but she couldn't bother to make sure that he had normal feet.
She couldn't pick a guy, a Vulcan, one of the smart at the top of her class.
Right.
She's like, I know what exactly the crewman to pin this on. The one who couldn't fit into the.
Yeah, makes perfect
Say
sense.
if the shoe fits, and then the guy looks at his feet, and they go, "I guess it doesn't."
Right.
Fit.
I also love that line. Just more Chekhov, Love in Russia. He's like, perhaps you have heard of classic Russian epic of Cinderella. If the shoe fits, wear it. So it's great. I love this movie. Yeah, and then we get the whole Kirk. No, Maria turns into Kirk, and then they have their little scuffle.
Yes.
It's like, I can't believe I kissed you. Must have been
Which-
your lifelong ambition.
Yeah.
I don't even need audio clips. I can just tell you guys what.
No,
happened.
it's better this way,
Kirk
actually.
acting against himself makes me go, how did he understudy with Christopher Plummer and not learn a fucking thing?
This is literally the weakest acting in all of the movie. Yeah.
Right. I think Nicholas Meyer just let him do his thing here. I think
It's probably like in his contract or something. They're like, okay, we're not going to let you direct this one, but you can still have a fucking screwed up scene where you can like do this. And you know what? If you want to, you can kiss yourself. Right? And he's like, done. I'll be in
done.
it.
Who else? I would love to kiss myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the
look in the mirror.
Chang's like the Rura Pente warden and the guards show up, right, with their big red pointy sticks. And the jig's up, and this is the part, Jeff. This is where you're thinking that Kirk actually died here, potentially. He got vaporized by this guy.
It's just a fun theory I
It could be a
have.
theory. Yeah.
It's a fun theory I have because everything afterward, Kirk, his whole demeanor changes, and we're told by the movie that he's been enlightened. But what if he wasn't? What if they just killed like the old racist Kirk, and then the shapeshifter was like, "Oh, you want me to do this? Okay, this is the best way to keep my cover going."
Too bad they didn't do something like they did with the X-Men, where you're like, you think it's the politician, and then all of a sudden you see Mystique's eyes. You know, it would have been cool to do something like that. Yeah,
They had done that at the end of the movie. That
would
would
have been amazing.
Yeah.
That would have ruined the whole movie.
He'd been like, "Kirk's dead." Yes.
That's something they would do in today's movie. Yeah, but back then they didn't really do stuff like that. Yeah.
Can you imagine William Shatner like watching the movie and they put that at the end of the movie?
I'd be.
But then we wouldn't have Generations, guys.
Yeah. Oh no, it would just be Martia as Kirk in Generations. So
chopping wood.
Oh, you think so? Yeah.
Or we don't
Chopping
know
wood.
until Generations, and then when he dies, she reverts back.
Oh yeah, and then we'd be like, what?
We'll get into that when we get into Generations. But apparently, Kirk actually dies way early in that movie, and people don't realize it. So
yeah, we gotta talk about that. We'll talk about
that
next Saturday. Yeah, and so like he's like they kill Martia with the disruptor, or we think at least, and he's like, well, why don't you just tell me what the plan is? And he's like, since you're all going to die, why not? And then Spock beams him up right then. He's like, could you have waited just 2 more minutes?
Could you have waited a little bit longer?
Chekhov, do you want to go back? And McCoy's like, absolutely not. Give me that coffee.
Kirk goes, it's cold.
Yeah, it's cold. No shit.
Right. And it's on their way to the bridge. I guess they're walking down the corridor. They run into those 2 guys who we saw earlier, and they're both dead. They both got the phaser to the head.
Somebody has nailed them at close range. Yeah.
Yeah, if you hit them with stun on close range, it wouldn't set off the alarms. And so the fact, the Valaris shows that, hey, if you try to vaporize something, it sets off the alarms. So, I
don't know. Even if you're shooting a weapon, you'd think they'd be able to detect that.
You'd think, yeah. But this is what they tell us. And it's after they find these 2 guys, Kirk pulls Spock aside and says, I got a theory, right? And Spock says, it's possible. So Kirk knows it's probably Valaris. Spock says, you might be right. So they stage this ruse where they're like, hey, we're going to talk to these guys, get the court reporter down there, even though they're dead.
And that whole scene where she's on the bridge and they're like interrogating her in a way, like that is just salty as shit. It is amazing. I love that scene.
Well, even right when she enters sickbay, right, and he turns on that light, and she's like, "You have to shoot. If you're logical, you have to shoot. You're in, right?" And he knocks that.
That's one of my favorite
phasers out of her hand.
But I think that's the reason why they wrote Kim Cattrall that way, because even from the beginning, you're like, I really hope somebody just fucking punches her in the face. Like, she's such a bitch. Like, you just want to, and then later on, she kind of gets her comeuppance, but she doesn't get it full on. But she gets it slapped out, and
she gets it pretty bad. Yeah, it's coming.
Technically,
yeah.
Okay, I got a question. Okay, so in the next scene, they're interrogating her. She says, "I won't tell you anything," and so Spock's mind melding her. So he's able to pull most of those answers out of her pretty quick. Like, who are the conspirators? We get Cartwright. Chang, and the Romulan ambassador. Yeah. And then where's the conference, right? Okay, but literally after, so he goes, I guess he goes into a deep scan to figure out like what she knows about where the conference is, and she doesn't know. And so wasn't that really unnecessary? Because 2 seconds later they call Sulu, like Sulu will know where the conference is.
See, so, I almost got like kind of a vibe of like Spock was trying to hurt her.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was almost like a vengeance thing, almost like Next Gen when Data like was killing the Borgs and he started feeling it. It was almost like to that vibe. You know what it's like?
Because he's pissed now. She's a bad guy.
Yeah, he's pissed off, but he can't show it. So this is the next best thing for him. Yeah.
I felt, it was a rape scene to me. Like he was like
in a way,
angry and raping her mentally.
He was pissed off. Yeah,
and it wasn't even necessary.
He was being very violent.
He didn't need to probe that hard for that information.
Sulu knew.
He literally knew in 2 seseconds. Let's call Sulu.
But I think that was why they showed it though, because they want to show that Spock can be fallible as well, right? Like he's not infallible. He's a guy that can go off the rocker too. You got to remember, he's still half human. So
So they just call Sulu and get the information they need. They're going to Camp Kittimer, and he warns Sulu about the bird of prey who can fire when cloaked. He goes, surely not. Speaking of which, like, what do we think? I didn't bring this up earlier, but what do you guys feel about like Sulu sort of being on his own ship for this movie? Do you guys like that?
I wish they had made him his own series. He did an awesome job as captain.
Is this coming anywhere from him and Shatner not getting along?
I think it was that, and I think that for a long time Sulu was pushing for this, or like George Takei was pushing for this.
Well, it makes sense. Like in theory, like there's gonna be a time where like these guys are gonna have to move on, and they're gonna get other postings, and eventually, this is a guy who was on one of the most decorated ships in Starfleet. Like he clearly has earned his way to get a captaincy if he needs it, right?
Right, that's the whole thing about these Star Trek crews, right? As they get older, you would expect that they would move on with their careers. They get promoted. A
lot of them don't, which doesn't make any sense. Like they get the rank, but they're still hanging out together. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Right. And
I like the Sulu angle personally. I thought it was.
Yeah, I thought. Well, I think it obviously works out for the battle when they're both taking on that ship at the end. Is there anything that happens between when they get to the planet? I don't think so. I think they're pretty much we see like the conference, right? Like we see the
conference, and you see the sniper setting up and all that. Yeah.
Right, so they're on their way, and I think we see Chang's there, and Kirk's like they're on their way, and they kind of know like she's out here somewhere, right? This cloaked ship we can't see that's going to get us. Yeah. So the Enterprise gets there first, and Chang starts his "Can you see me, Kirk? I can see you."
The cat and mouse thing, yeah.
Right, and the battle. So Jeff, you had mentioned that this battle felt like it was the right amount of time. Did you like all of the cackling from Chang throughout this?
It's super cinematic. It's fun to watch. It's they knew to not make it this long drawn out thing, which all the other movies really do.
Oh yeah.
Especially the Christopher Lloyd one with Search for Spock. It just goes forever.
Took forever.
Yeah.
And
it's
stop it.
It's epic but short.
Yeah, it is.
Like the third act starts when they get back on the ship, right? So really, the third act is probably the fastest of all of them.
It moves really quick.
Probably like 15 minutes total for everything, right? Like it's not a super slow thing. I agree with Jeff. I think it was the perfect amount, and it was kind of the whole Chang playing with his food kind of thing, right?
This is my favorite.
Cry havoc, and let's send the dogs of war.
But that's what Chang wants. Chang wants him to, he wants to obliterate him. Like Chang doesn't want any of this bullshit. He wants to keep fighting, right?
No, like warrior to warrior. All like he has like this admiration, respect for Kirk, and he also just wants to sort of like slowly kill Kirk too in this moment, right?
They're the old school guys. They're the guys that have been fighting for ages, right?
Right. And so as they're getting their ass kicked in this fight, Spock's like, gas, we can just make a torpedo that can go after their tailpipe or whatever. And they
must have a tailpipe.
They must have a tailpipe. Would you like to help me perform surgery on a torpedo? He says to
I'd be delighted.
Fascinating.
So why didn't they use this in Next Gen when they did the tachyon grid? Like, was that technology lost? Like, why wouldn't this have worked?
I don't know.
Remember when they were
I don't get a good answer for that,
daughter
too.
And okay,
Yeah.
technology
Because
lost.
Star Trek
or
convenience.
convenience, yeah.
Right. and finally, so yeah, I just like as they're trying to put this torpedo come, they're getting hammered. Eventually the Excelsior shows up. Right. I like when as they're getting there, Sulu's like, fly her apart then. I'm coming in to help my friends, which I really like that part. And I like when McCoy, as they're building the torpedo, says,
I'd give real money if she'd shut up.
Yeah.
And he goes, where's that damn torpedo? And he's like, it's ready, Jim. Lock and load.
And when they shoot it, there's a lot of tension at that point. Like you're right at like the bar of the tension,
right?
And you see this thing, and it's kind of like flying around, and then you see you keep getting shots of Christopher Plummer, and he's like, what's going to happen? And then all of a sudden he's like, like that, right? And he just starts getting shocked and stuff. I just thought it was great.
To be or not to be.
This is one of the. I love him standing on his bridge, just watching this thing.
He's
and
just
then
taking it.
right at the end. Just turns
like, I'm done.
left for some reason.
And he kind of turns his head at the end. He goes, you know, because it's kind of like checkmate, right? They got him.
Right?
It's so much more dramatic.
But he's accepting his fate, right? Which is kind of what the entire movie is really about. Is it's accepting that things have to change. Like you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again, right? Like it's gonna have to, even Kirk has to change, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about change. Yeah.
It's also Chang is a warrior. He says that to Kirk multiple times. I'm a warrior.
Yes.
You're a warrior.
Yeah.
And he dies like this warrior's death. And he's right. He's accepting the fact that he's dying this warrior's death. So he's quoting Shakespeare to be like, put a sonnet on his death, which is very Klingon.
He's romanticizing it. Yeah.
And his name is one letter away from change.
Chang and change. Well, I hadn't put that one together.
I'm not totally sure that.
Couple letters.
Even I wouldn't have. I don't think I could have come up with that one.
You know what, Jane? Props to you. That was impressive.
Yeah. Target that explosion and fire. Sulu says they blow that thing up.
Keep firing. Yeah.
Keep firing. Boom, boom, boom. They annihilate the thing, and then they beam down pretty much shortly after. Where at this point, we see the Klingon. He's setting up as a sniper in the little tower to take out the Federation president.
He's already taking the window out.
He's got the little thingy circle and got the gun through. And then, they all show up. And that leap that Shatner or Kirk does to save the Federation president.
It was a whoa.
That was, I don't think Michael Jordan could leap like that.
From Game of Thrones, where you're like, how the heck did he get that high?
It's like, Mr. President!
Mom just made a good point that it is very much a metaphor for JFK, except this time they save JFK.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Very much.
This movie has so much JFK stuff going on with it. Whoever primarily wrote the movie, I guess it was Harv Bennett, really loved JFK or JFK history because
it was actually Nicholas Meyer wrote the
script. Meyer. Harv Bennett directed it, right?
No, Nicholas Meyer directed it.
Oh, okay.
I think Harv Bennett was
the elevated sniper versus a guy just like standing up in the court there or whatever it is and shooting them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that kind
the
of
grassy
makes
knoll.
like a JFK feel to it.
Well, Klingons aren't afraid to die, right? So literally, they could just have somebody like get up and shoot them. Like it wouldn't matter, right? So, but you have that elevated thing and all that.
But it wasn't a Klingon that did it.
That's true.
Speaking of which, JFK the film came out the same year as this, so it's a little interesting.
Good movie, but that was a movie that ran really long.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so and then Scotty's the one to eventually shoot.
Yes.
Oh no.
It turns out to be Colonel West, René Auberjonois, who we'd met earlier with the flip chart paper. Mm-hmm. He turns out to be one of the other conspirators, and then they arrest.
Like, why are you using flip charts?
Yeah, Scotty didn't. He has no. But he was reading a flip chart earlier in that room when he found the uniforms.
He was, yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so they save the day. Kirk gives a speech and he goes, "It's about the future. Your father called the future the undiscovered country." He gives a speech and everyone claps. Even that Klingon ambassador who always calls him a renegade and a terrorist. James D. Kirk, renegade and terrorist.
The best part comes right after that.
What?
The signatures.
Oh yeah. Well, no, before the signatures.
I agree.
The best part is kind of the end. So So then they've saved the day, and they get up to the ship, and Uhura says, "Well, we've been called in for decommissioning." They say goodbye to Sulu. He says, "Nice knowing you, or nice seeing you again, Sulu."
Yeah,
And
Sulu's
then-
like, I got a better ship. I'm leaving. Fuck it.
I'm going. So Sulu and Kirk say their goodbyes, and then they say, "Okay, we got the call. We got to come home, and we're done. We're retired." And
They also make a point when they show the crew on the bridge for the last time. There's an empty seat where Sulu sat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they make a point to do that as well.
Which is
I
cool.
didn't catch that.
right, and Spock's answer to this order.
If I were human, I believe my response would be go to hell.
Yes, and they say, "Where do you want to go, Kirk?" He's like, "Second star to the right and straight on through morning," which is a Peter Pan reference. And then he gives that final captain's log. These are the final voyages of the USS Enterprise, and soon this legacy will become part of a new crew and a new adventure of the Enterprise, which is, I think, is a nod to the Next Generation, which was already well in going on at this point.
They were in their third season at this point.
But I think it's also saying that one day, like those guys, they're gonna be the next movie crew, and they were, right. Like they went on.
We knew it was inevitable. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the signatures, to your point, in the final credits,
Which I'm not a guy who gets teary, as anybody who really knows me knows this, but I'll tell you, it hits when you watch that. When you see those signatures come up. What's that?
That surprises me. I find you very sensitive.
Oh, I'm not very.
He is a Pisces.
So speaking of,
you don't believe this garbage either,
One
do you?
podcast without you mentioning Pisces.
Yeah, like.
So speaking of the signatures, also are the Avengers Endgame did the same motif, and they based it off this movie.
They admitted that they picked it up from this, right?
Oh,
yes,
sure.
but like I feel like in the for this movie, like it's more of that teary-eyed moment that Jody's talking about. Whereas when we watched it in the theater, it's more like, oh yeah, because it's like got that music at the end of an Endgame, like it's got that Avengers music. So it's just a different feel, even though they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
You know that we're now at the end, right? Like this is the end, and that's really what the whole movie's about. It's about the end, right?
Yeah.
It's about the end. It's about change, right? The undiscovered country. So that's why I actually was thinking of this the other day because I watched this movie about a week ago because I watched 5 and 6 back to back just to kind of get them done. Because I felt so bad about 5, I had to watch 6. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, would I like this movie just as much if it wasn't the last one? Like, is it because of all these little feels that I think it's a better movie? So I sat there for a minute and I'm like, you know what? No, I still love this movie. It's still the best movie in my opinion. So I just thought I would share that.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave, let's get to our rankings.
Yeah, we gotta get to the rankings. Let me get that up here on screen because that's.
So we're ranking the original ones, right?
The original movies. So we're going here. I'm gonna bring this up on screen.
Mom will have to put her rankings in as well.
Okay, I'll have to add a column for Mom here. Let me just do.
This is some excitement.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stand it.
Jane, keep talking while I do.
Yeah. Okay. But just looking at that, should you not hide? Can you hide from this list the Rotten Tomatoes score? Because in that influence our rankings? I don't know.
It does. It could.
It's fine. I can tell you that.
It won't influence yours.
No, I don't really care what Rotten Tomatoes says about anything.
I'm at this point. I thought I was solid on what my rankings were at this point. I don't. I may have changed my opinion through this whole process. Yeah. I think for the beginning of next, I think we should rank the next gen ones at the start.
Okay, so I'm going to give this movie a 10.
A 10? Wow.
Yeah, this is a perfect movie. Jane, can you give us all? Well, we need all your rankings, actually.
I know. When were we doing this?
Well, just give me this movie to start.
Okay, so let's see. I would say motion picture. I would give 4.5. Search for Spock. 5.5. Yeah. Final Frontier.
You're jumping all over the place.
Well, yes. It's,
Do it the odd movie
it's
first.
the
Get
way
it out
I
of the
can
way.
do this. So what do we? Final Frontier is 4.8.
Okay.
Oh no, this is where it gets hard. You know what? I'm gonna have to go with a 9 for Undiscovered Country.
Okay.
8.5 for Wrath of Khan.
Okay.
This was supposed to
And an 8.5 for The Voyage Home.
Okay. Thanks, Jane.
All right.
Okay, Jeff, what do you want to give this movie? Because you've given us all your other rankings already.
I'm
So,
gonna give it a 9.3.
okay, Mom, this movie.
This movie, I'm going to give an 8.5.
And what do you consider Voyage Home your favorite movie?
9.5.
9.5. Okay. Do you have ranks for the other 4 movies?
I've watched them all.
Okay. What Star Trek 1,
I give that a 4.
Star Trek 2,
6.
okay.
Harsh critic on stuff.
3,
7.5.
and Final Frontier.
2.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I have the exact same rank, Mom.
Jody, can I get your scores in any order you'd like?
Let's just start from the top and go down.
Okay.
Okay, so that 2.5. 8.
Yep.
What's that one? That one? 3, right?
Richard Spock.
6.5.
Okay.
8.5. This was like 3.5.
Yeah.
And then 9.5.
Okay, Kevin, same thing.
1. I'll never watch that movie again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
2, I would give it 7.
Yeah. 3.
3.
4.
I'd give that a 9.
Real up and down, eh? And then Frontier, Final Frontier.
Well, we'll go 3 with that too.
3.2.
No, just 3.
3. Okay. And this movie.
9.5.
Okay, Ashley, I know you're off screen, so I would rather take your scores.
Star Trek is a picture. I probably
Say that again.
3.
3.
Wrath of Khan, like a 6.
Oh.
Searcher Spock.
I would give probably a 6 as well. Voyage Home is a 9.5. Final Frontier is 1. And 6, I give it 8.5.
Okay. All right. So then I'm going to hide my D for now. This is. There we go. Okay. So this is giving us the answer. What is the best of these original Star Trek movies? So we have all our rankings. So according to our average, we're saying that Star Trek 6 is the best movie, but just barely at the 9.2 versus the 9.1 we gave to Voyage Home. And Star Trek 2 at a 7.4. So even though Wrath of Khan has always been considered this amazing movie, it's
when I
not
rewatched it, it's not as amazing.
we don't think so. Now, if we balance out the IMDb rankings and Rotten Tomatoes and whatever, we have a tie between Undiscovered Country and Voyage Home. Star Trek 3 is much higher on the sort of this ranking.
3 is better.
And 5 is better than 1. I'm happy.
5 is better than 1.
Well,
but if you look at just this group here, our averages, we're saying 1 and 5 are basically a 1.
They're the same.
So
they're equal level of shit.
Right. So it depends how much we want to look at what the sort of the rest of the world thinks, just versus our group. But
it only matters what I think.
And then, yeah. Because Jody, you gave Yeah, you gave 9.5 to this movie, an 8.5 to Voyage Home, and an 8. So
You didn't do the total per person.
Oh yeah. So like,
who is the biggest Star Trek movie fan here?
the biggest Star Trek movie fan is me. The second
there's a shocker,
best
shocker.
Star Trek movie fan is Jane.
No. I'm
Also
not. I would
not a
always say
shocker.
I'm not. Well, no, I've always said I'm not. I'm not as much a movie.
The
fan as
harshest
I am a
critic
TV
is
person.
Kevin, and then followed by
Not a
Ashley.
shocker. Also not a shocker.
And then Jody, you're one of the more generous raters, actually. You don't so.
I've had a lot to drink.
Okay, I'm gonna hide that. Come back here and
Because reverb is killing me.
Okay, reverb.
Whenever you do that, it's reverb. Yeah.
What is it? What is reverb?
It's
Echo.
echoes. Except you
Echoes.
guys. You guys don't.
You
echo.
guys are fine, but everybody else echoes.
Do you know what it is? I'm sharing a screen, and so that must be what I got to figure that out. Okay, so all right. I think that's it
Until
for
we
the
get
Star
into
Trek
the next gen
movie.
movies.
Now we go to the next gen movies, and guess what, guys? Next week we're in store for this.
Life forms. You tiny little life
form.
You precious little life
form.
Oh,
Where are you?
Okay.
Oh, we missed the dead it up part.
I just liked Kevin's face through that whole thing. That was so good. I can't wait to talk to him about that part next week. So
He's not a fan.
I
so
am,
yeah,
actually.
Are you? I didn't think you were a fan of the Generations.
yeah, and we're heading into Generations. A nice torch passing movie, has a bit of this crew and more of the next crew.
It's got a lot of overacting by Kirk. And
all right, but I want to thank all of you for being here week after week, talking to me about these Star Trek movies. I really appreciate it. It's what a
You're
crew
welcome.
we are. What a crew. Thank you, Benny.
Thanks for putting this on.
Yeah, and I'm excited for the next stage, which is the next gen movies. Yes. Benny, are you excited about the next generation movies? No, he's not. No, he's not.
Clearly not.
No comment.
You should have
from
watched
Benny.
that.
Yeah. Okay.
No, watch this.
All right. I think we're gonna sign off here. I'm sorry. What?
It's so funny.
You want me to mute him? Okay. Here, Jane was asking me about something. All right. Here we go. Make sure to subscribe. Facebook, YouTube, RSS feeds, whatever, wherever you listen to your podcast. We got Deep Space Nine podcasts on Tuesday nights. Watch that here on Live Long on Podcast. We have original series episodes on Friday nights. Mostly with my dad here on Friday nights, and Jody and Jeff. We're doing that. We also got Super Mater Brothers. We got it's another channel. Follow us there. You can watch our Survivor finale on Wednesday. It's great. We have a whole Westworld season 3 catalog you can check out. We're also going to be doing Trivial Debates later this month over on Trivial Debates. Jane, what are you doing?
Nothing. What'd you think of?
What thing?
Nothing.
Okay. Well, I'm just bye, everybody.
Best outro ever.
Happening?
Gotta
What's
lay
happening?
off that crack.
What's happening is I had notes. I was reading off my notes to finish out the episode. Jane clicked off for some
Excellent.
reason.
Well
It
done,
just took it
Jane.
away. What were you doing?
Jane's the auditor. Jane's like, you're done. I'm tired of hearing you.
She's testing you. She wants to see what your improv skills are like.
She got one of
And apparently not well.
Wait, isn't it just there? Right there.
It's like watching my
I know
mother
where
use
it is. You don't interrupt the guy when he's
What
in
do
his
I
house.
gotta click on? What do I
love
gotta
how
click on?
This podcast ends just the way it started.
Started as a shit show and now it's
Worst
ending.
ending
as
of
a
a
shit show.
podcast ever.
Or is
All
it the best?
Have a great day and night, everybody. We'll check you out next time. Thanks,
Jane's
everyone.
dying.
Oh, I've wasted my life.
Yeah. Okay. Good night.
I'll never get this time back.